I'm not a Utah native, but I really have lived the majority of my life in Utah, so I identify with Utah as much as anything else, I think, in at any location or any destination on the planet, other than Europe. I've lived in Europe on 2 different occasions, and in many ways I find that I seem to think a little bit more like Europeans. That's not a statement of, I guess, to distinguish myself in any way whatsoever, but it's part of what I've learned, I guess, through my experience overall. And hopefully I can outline that a little bit further as I go into some of my background and my path and why I think that way. But I wanted to cover a couple of things. The title is just that, it's a title. I think in general, political science is a platform that can launch you many different ways. And that's what's fantastic about it. But it's not just political science, it would probably be any social science degree that you have the opportunity to study or you choose to study. So I'll jump into that a little bit more. The agenda I intend to follow, and I'm not going to hold myself to this, is political science. Is this a social science, or what is it as a social science? What my path really was overall, and then the lessons I've learned. So I'm going to give you a few things I think that I've experienced in life, and things that I believe might be words of wisdom for someone, I'm happy to then also answer any questions at the tail end. I guess stepping into it, we had a brief conversation at the start about social science degrees and how they're viewed. Social science in general is maybe not always considered an exact science. It's not is it a science? What is this all about? And I got to experience this. Interestingly, my father was an engineer. He studied metallurgical engineering here at the University of Utah. But he didn't have this fixed mindset that you have to be an engineer, or that you have to be a doctor, or that you have to be, my father ended up later, after realizing that he didn't enjoy engineering, he got an MBA at the University of Washington and ended up working in technology. Now, I remember as a child going to work with him sometimes on the weekends and thinking, I'm not sure I would want to be in technology. What is this? This is not so interesting. But what I did experience out of my father's engineering kind of upbringing, and then his path in going into business and into technology, was that if nothing else, you need to work hard. I learned that from both of my parents, actually. My mother was an extremely hard worker, and that's one of the most solid things I think you can impart and you can find, is be around people who work hard, people who are committed. So along the path of finding a career, I don't really remember having strong input from my parents as to this is what you should do. This is what is a real job, this is what is a real path, this is what my parents essentially allowed me to take a path and choose a path. And as I jumped into college, I was trying to figure out, what the hell am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I all about? What am I interested in? And a little ways into the path overall, I guess, I realized, okay, I think I enjoy debate, I enjoy critical thinking, I enjoy writing. I guess I should be a lawyer. This has got to be my path, right? I'll go into that a little bit more detail, but on the topic of social sciences, just as I was graduating with my undergrad, I was dating a girl, and I got to go to a dinner and meet her father the first time. And at this dinner, her father started explaining something about her cousin or someone who was, deciding what they were going to do. And he said, I don't really know. I mean, I think he's getting some stupid social science degree or something. And my wife at the time stopped her father and said, well, Dad, you might want to know that Brian is studying political science. And I think in a way, maybe I was just naive, but I didn't take necessarily as an insult, other than, okay, he's old school, he's an engineer, he believes that that's what you have to do. But I do, and I have seen this, further down in life, that there are people that have strong bias. And I look at that, and I would like to say, I guess just one thing very strongly is, don't ever be apologetic about this path. Don't ever consider that this is not a strong and a real path. And I say that not for political science, but all of the social science degrees. jump into it, the social sciences here, I think what we have here is really the departments that I stole from the website, so hopefully it's accurate. But I was trying to look at this and what is some of the common ground in all of these. We have people here, I think, representing political science. Anybody from anthropology? No? Anyone want to represent what anthropology is? No?
Study of cultures.
Okay, the study of cultures. All right, economics? I think this was your path.
The dismal science, yes.
Okay.
Study of resource constraints and how they shape people's choices.
Okay. Sociology, fairly simple. Do we have any sociology? No? Someone willing to represent it? I just don't want to give the wrong definition. Okay. Even geography. Okay. So psychology, I guess I would say, is overall, this is an area that I believe we are still really, really far behind. The study of the human mind is something that is, we're still really, really lacking here. If we look at it overall, the advancements that we've made, and this is so fundamental for understanding life and people and interaction. Geography, what is this? Someone please help me on this one.
Well,
No?
there's human geography and there's physical geography.
Okay.
So, and
If you were to study geography, you're not allowed to only cover one for the entire time you're there, though, right?
Right.
But it is still the interaction of humans
In their place.
in their place and in their cultures. Okay. So the only common tie in all of these overall, right, is people. Okay? And that's what I think is the beautiful thing about social sciences. And it's also a scary thing, that if you don't enjoy people, you should consider possibly something else, another path. Even if you dislike people, but you enjoy the study of people, you're okay still. But the common thread there is people. And thank God that we have this study still. We have this moment and this interaction overall still, and we believe that we should be studying people, our interaction, our history, how we interact with the earth, how we interact with behavior, consumer behavior, and study and spending habits, and everything else that's associated with it. For me personally, the study of deep cells and other elements like this would be really, really difficult for me to get into. So luckily I did not go into molecular biology. But it is an important thing you have to ask yourself. Do you enjoy people? Do you enjoy studying people? Do you enjoy interacting with people? Do you enjoy learning from people? Do you care? Do you care about people? Do you enjoy having human experiences? And I think if there are elements of that, you can study any one of these paths, and those are things that will propel you into an interesting life and an interesting path in life overall. I have a really cheesy career planning guide here that I grabbed just randomly off the internet. It couldn't be a more embarrassing slide, but I loved how ridiculous it was. But I'm going to focus on the right side of this only. The left side actually is fairly left brain functions overall anyway. You've got to research what your career options are, what could we do, how do you link a major with a career. But all of that is sort of really basic tactical elements and things that you can do. The right side of this overall is extremely difficult. And I'll go through that in a little bit more detail as we go through this. But knowing who you are, knowing what your values really are, and identifying your own skills. Why is this so hard? In general, it's hard because it's really difficult to be honest with ourselves in life. Many of our struggles are that I've created right here, right? We have to fight and work and learn, and we have to be able to learn how to be honest with ourselves so we can be honest with others. And we also have to be honest with others. That's not easy either in social situations, right? And learning what your values are so that you can understand where and how to start a path that's going to help you have equilibrium within yourself. Okay, I have a couple things overall at the starting point of this that comes across a little bit preachy, but I wanted to just outline, I think, some of the key things that I've learned and that are important overall. And as you're studying and trying to prepare for what you're going to do, the biggest thing you could think about right now is defining success. I wish at age 19, 17, whatever it was, if I had said, what does success look like when I'm nearly 47 years old? I had an idea what that is, but if you can define what success looks like when you're going to look back on your life up front, that will help determine your path in a much bigger way. There is no judgment associated with what that is. That is within yourself. Is success a certain milestone as far as income or net worth, a title within an organization, how much of the world you've possibly been able to see, where and how you've moved hierarchically, I guess, within an organization, or possibly something more simple. And I think back to the path of people is how many people have you touched and affected in life in a positive way. Okay, the second thing overall is work hard. If you're struggling with how to work in general, you need to figure out how to go do this. And I would suggest a couple of different paths. Force yourself to go and get some temporary work in all the different capacities. Okay, we don't really get a great path in life to where we get to try all these different jobs before we actually take a path. But I did try quite a few different jobs. And I'll tell you one that was a really, I guess, impactful one for me is I had served a mission in Rome, Italy, and came home and was just looking for some temporary work. So a neighbor and friend of my father said, "I've got some work for you." He owned an electrical company, and he's like, "Just show up down at this hotel downtown, which is coming right off of 6 South, I think, is where it was. And just show up, go report to so and so, and you'll be good to go." So I was all eager, happy to go make a wage, excited, and showed up, and they said, "Have you ever run a jackhammer?" I said, "No, I haven't actually. But I'm happy to try. Let's go, let's get after this." So we were taking out essentially those very large cement blocks that were holding up the tall lights in the parking lot as they were redoing this whole hotel. And I got to do that job for 3 days. That was enough for me to know that I don't really want to run a jackhammer. I was still young, I was still fairly fit, I could handle this, but I remember pounding through this thing and having to hold it up sideways with my leg. And this was serious work. And at one point, it was even more poignant, but at one point, a homeless man came up to me and asked for some money. He wanted to go buy a sandwich or whatever. And I said, have you ever run a jackhammer? And he said, "No, but I'm willing to try." Probably shouldn't have done this. There's a few things in my life that I probably shouldn't have done. But there was no one else there. I was left alone with this jackhammer. And I said, "You know what, I think you should work for this for a little bit, and I'm happy to buy a sandwich for you." And so he got after it. And I was a little worried after a while, thinking, okay, wait a minute, if this guy Elson gets hurt, how do we get this covered? What are we doing? And I sort of had a little bit of a moment. But he worked for 30 minutes. And I helped guide him, and I helped even hold the jackhammer a little bit with this whole thing. And afterwards, this guy, I'm not sure why it's making me emotional, afterwards this guy thanked me and said that was the best sandwich I've ever had. He worked for it. It was something that made him proud. And he hadn't had work. He had not done anything yet. You need to be working hard, and you need to be proud of your work. And that's something that will be a key part of your overall health and happiness. I'm happy to have had people around me who taught me how to work, expected me to work, but taught me how to work. Okay, another key lesson I think overall is you need to be bold. When I say advocacy here, you need to be a self-advocate, but you also need to be an advocate for others. So being bold is extremely important in life. That doesn't mean be bold always. It doesn't mean that you need to speak up and be the loudest person all the time. But you do need to speak up. You'll need to speak up when you know that something is right, when you know that possibly you're headed down the wrong path, and you'll need to be able to stick up for others. In general, really the most difficult, I think, in life, to be your own self-advocate. So surround yourself with people who will also be an advocate for you. I've had a few examples, I think, overall, where I felt proud to have been bold. And I'll cover a couple of those as it ties into my career itself. But I've never had a problem speaking up. I've probably had the reverse problem. I'm reminded of that by my daughters and my wife on a regular basis. In fact, now that I'm in a campus setting, I remember a time in my when I was working on my MBA, where the professor, excuse me, I think this was actually a computer science class. So it was an elementary kind of computer science class at Westminster College. And the professor continued to use a word inappropriately. He kept using the word penultima as if it was supposed to mean the ultimate. And after a while, I finally just had it. I was sick. It was just, so I raised my hand and I said, I think you're using this word inappropriately. And he's like, I'm sorry? And I said, well, you keep saying the penultima, or the penultimate. And I said, I don't think that's the definition. No, the definition of the word is not really what you're, which, of course, I didn't really need to raise my hand and tell the teacher during class, but somehow I did. That was that moment that, and at the time then we had the internet open, people could get in a campus setting, somebody quickly Googled it and said, yeah, of course, it means the second to the last, sir. It's not really the ultimate, it's what if you're, I've had many other moments in life where I was a little too bold, a little too anxious. So learning to have, how to temper that, I guess, is a key part in life overall. But there have been moments where I was bold and I wouldn't have been able to, be happy otherwise. To think back about this later and go, wait a minute, if I had not stepped up right then, I would have regretted this. And you don't want to have those moments where you think, oh, I wish I had done, I wish I had. In some ways, I would almost err on the other side that, oh, I was a little too bold there, and you can temper it back from there. Choose relationships wisely. This covers across the whole gamut. Okay, I think back in going into your early days in life, overall, you're always encouraged to choose good friends, choose good, but that will last for throughout your whole life. That you want to choose people who are going to help make you a better person. They're going to expect things out of you, and they're going to expect you to be the person that they believe you are. And in many ways, this is something that can help tremendously. Hanging out and spending time or working with people that don't expect the best out of you, you'll get just that. Okay? I think in the continuum overall, you've all seen this, I'm sure, the nice chart that shows supportive versus expectations. You want to be up on the far right with people in general, that they have high expectations, but they're also highly supportive. Okay, I think early on in my career, it was important for me to find a mentor. Overall, you should find a mentor, and you should also be a mentor. This is something that is all part of the cycle of I guess, the beauty of the universe and the beauty of people in general. This is how it goes around. You can help. Expect some help, but also make sure and give some help. I would suggest quickly, so I don't forget, your boss is unlikely to be your mentor a lot of times. Your boss is going to be your boss. And sometimes you get very fortunate and have an amazing boss. But your mentor should probably be someone other than your boss. And take the best things and the great things that you can out of your boss. Okay, I'm going to step in and jump right into my path that ties in a little bit. I guess if I go back to political science being a platform to a lot of different paths, I'm not going to cover what all those might be, but I do believe it's very broad. Mine happens to have been technology. And 20 years in, I'm happy that I chose that path. I didn't necessarily love technology at its core, just for technology's sake. In fact, I wasn't even a video game guy. I'm still not. So, but I do enjoy intellectual challenges, and I get that in technology and the path of technology. I also happen to have the aptitude for it, where I can get down very deep technically. I didn't realize that I did necessarily, but there are many different paths that you could take with with political science. And I'll cover, I guess, maybe even a couple of mine that could have veered even another way. And they still could. I think it's okay, I think, to admit that I'm still trying to figure out totally what I want to do when I grow up also. Okay? My path overall, I was going to be a lawyer. I had figured this out. It was pretty clear. I'd kind of maybe gone through all the different things and at least recognized enough about myself that I wasn't going to be a doctor. Didn't want to be a dentist. You know, we go through also all the old school things. Engineer? No. Fireman? I think that I'd already passed that one at age 9, but you never know. That could have still come up. But I at least recognized that, as I covered before, I enjoyed writing. Didn't necessarily love reading, just for reading's sake, but I enjoyed interaction and I enjoyed, you know, debate and communication. Okay, so it came down to a lawyer I will be. I worked at the Attorney General's office and had a fantastic time there. I got to be involved in some interesting projects. I studied, essentially did a project overall on what it costs the state of Utah to defend cases for frivolous litigation tied to inmates in prison. It's pretty interesting. Got to spend time at the prison and everything else. But I was still kind of going, oh, I don't know about this. The attorneys I spent time around and what they did on a regular basis, I was like, maybe I'd still want to study, but I want to be on the business side of law, and not necessarily be someone that was in a courtroom. But I continued down the path, and political science I enjoyed thoroughly, the study overall, and I still enjoy it. It is something that continues to be a part of me, and always will be. In fact, we can save a few minutes, we can probably talk about the recent political situation. I'm sure that would be an interesting conversation. So there you go. You go get a degree, you go take the LSAT. I'm on my way to law school and moving off to Washington, D.C. Okay? That's not exactly how it went down, but I did get the degree. I did take the LSAT, and I got a job. Also, I got married just after I graduated, actually. And I took a job at a small technology company. This was 1995. If we go back to that year, what was going on in 1995? So, trying to remember what are the relevant elements of it. The Oklahoma City bombing happened in 95. The O.J. Simpson trial started. As an attorney, that was pretty interesting. We knew Kardashian name for a different reason back at that time. But the internet really, as it is, started at that time. So I don't think Al Gore had claimed it yet at that point, but it did start around that. So there was a modem company locally here in Salt Lake City that had been started, and they were building laptop modems. And I happened to know some people there. I thought, this is great. I'll go get a job, save some money while I'm studying for the LSAT and preparing to go back east and go to law school. And I took a job very entry level. I got to make some money. But I used connections to get in. And within just a couple of months, I was quickly adapting to what was going on there and enjoying what was going on. But they were essentially really disorganized, and I didn't know better. I came with some suggestions. Wait a minute, we could be doing this a lot better. We could improve this. We could also increase revenues overall if we started changing the way that we were handling both inbound and outbound efforts to go forward. And the internet was booming, so this was an outstanding time. And the fact that I was a little bit bold and stepped forward, I started to get recognized for this. So 6 months in, I had a fairly senior gentleman come to me one day and said, hey, we'd really like you to consider coming to work for us in this organization. Again, not knowing better, or maybe just being transparent and being a human, I said, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for recognizing me. But I'm actually going to law school. I took a job to make some money for a little while, and I wasn't going to stick here probably for longer than a year, and I wouldn't want to go and take this role. And he said, that's fantastic, Brian. He's like, I think that's really cool that you have a path, but I actually don't think that's the right path for you. I kind of thought, wait a minute, who the hell are you? How do you you're offering me this job, but also telling me that I shouldn't be an attorney? So I had the dialogue with him multiple occasions, and he said, I just think you are a business person at heart, and I think going and studying law and going down that path is the wrong move for you. He said, well, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to go back to the law schools and go interview where you wanted to consider going to school. I'm going to hold this position open for you for 2 months before I start searching for someone on the outside. And then I want to meet with you in a month and see where your head is, and then let's decide from there. So, went back to DC, interviewed at law schools. The whole time I was just so confused. And I was fighting within myself that I had a path. I was on a path. This was where I was supposed to be going. This is what I was going to do. I've been telling everybody I'm going to be an attorney. But I knew in my core that I was really not going down the right path. And I really enjoyed business. I enjoyed even the technology, but I enjoyed the challenges that were associated with that. So I came back and we sat down well before the 2 months down, and I said, let's go. Okay, I'm ready. And to this day, I really, really appreciate that this person recognized something in me that I maybe hadn't recognized fully or hadn't been able to admit yet at that point. And this person ended up becoming a really good mentor for me. In many ways, as a boss, he was not an amazing boss, actually. But he truly helped me find the right path, find out where my skills were, and what things that I could do to move forward. He stayed in technology for quite a while, and eventually, ironically, realized that maybe that's not his best path either, and moved along to do something that was a little more in the outdoors space, and he made a good living along the way. But this was a key a turning point for me in life, and it was someone else. It was a third party that was helping me realize something about myself that I hadn't yet realized. It's not easy to do. Okay, so along the path, I'll go into a couple of things. I think overall, since that point, I guess, I instantly was engaged in stuff I probably shouldn't have been at that age. But the internet was booming, things were growing. If you could prove yourself, they gave you more and more responsibility. So within another maybe 2 to 3 months, I was traveling to Japan, I was traveling to Singapore, and I was doing business deals that, again, I sometimes question whether or not they really understood that I was so young and wasn't quite, but I was doing the deals, I was working them. I still remember, actually, when I'm looking at it as far as, when have you made it? What is success? But the first time that I flew on a business class flight to Asia, and they had to pay, whatever, $6 grand for this flight, I thought, really? For me? This is do they know? I did one trip early on in that stage where I went to Japan, and then I went to Singapore, and then I flew from Singapore to London for some follow-on meetings there. And I remember thinking as I did this trip around the world that I thought, it was pretty amazing. I've arrived. Obviously it was far from arriving, but I was experiencing the world, and I was always curious about the world. So this was an amazing tie-in for as far as business, and then being able to go see vast parts of the world. So it is something that came along with the job and with my experience, but I really enjoyed the study of people along the way, and the study of cultures and the way they operate and function. Obviously, mostly tied to the business and the business practices, but that was something that I've truly appreciated. Again, back to people, is that there's a lot to study there, and we all have this innate ability to adapt and adjust and to figure out how we survive. We have this survival instinct, but we also have an ability to adapt and work with people along the way. And I guess if I were to put a hierarchy as far as who I enjoy doing business with the most versus other, I won't list this all there, but it is very clear in my mind based on how they operate. But it was extremely difficult for me to operate and function in a business meeting in Japan early on. If I go to the third bullet there, as far as being bold, you can't go into business meetings there and just get after it. And I'm very direct. I want to sit down and talk about, if it already hasn't been cleared out, I want to talk about it right then in the meeting. What do you hope to get out of this? What do we hope to get out of this? How are we going to make this happen? And you just can't do that. When the kind of the younger Japanese people within our organization was trying to educate me on this, I was, wait a minute, what? But through this 4-hour meeting without ever really talking about what they want to get and how they want to get it done, and can we make this? So how does anything ever get done? I just couldn't deal with that concept. I still struggle with it a little bit, but I've learned to appreciate why they do business the way they do and their cultural background and where that comes from, even if it's not my favorite style. But I was able to do and negotiate contracts with people, and when I say contracts, I guess business deals and arrangements tied to this in Singapore, in Beijing, in Shanghai. I've been to Taiwan, and spent a lot of time in broad areas in Asia. And while that's still not my preferred area in geography versus Europe, I really enjoy the relationships that I've built over the years working with these people. And it's extremely important to be able to understand how to relate to people abroad, but also domestically, given how we have obviously a very broad, mixed, and global environment that we work within today. Okay, so I think I outlined, I actually meant to take this one out.
I know what that is.
You know what that is?
That's if millennials voted.
That's very good, actually. I was going to leave it in there as a placeholder, and I think I forgot to cut it out. It is sort of mapping where I have been in the U.S. and haven't been in the U.S. So where the millennials did, it wasn't even actually their voting, right? That was the irony of the whole thing. But I've had a chance to visit the U.S., which, by the way, culturally we have very different elements of the U.S. that people don't appreciate or understand. But it is very different doing business in the South, in the Northeast, and in the Midwest. Okay, I did do a map, I guess, kind of just a curiosity for myself, the travels and the places I've been able to see through the career path that I chose. I think, fast forwarding a little bit in where I went, but I went down the modem path and moved along at an organization for quite a while that it continued to grow through acquisition and also naturally. And I got to a certain point in my career where I realized, wait a minute, we're not investing the same way that I think we should, and where the market is going. And I chose to have a very bold meeting with the general manager at one point when I realized that this was, it didn't seem to be the organization of the growth organization that I thought it was going to be. And I sat down with the general manager and said, I could be wrong here, but it appears to me that we're not investing here, we're investing here, but we're not really investing here, or we're half-heartedly investing in this area. And I guess I just would like to have a candid conversation with you about what that means for the company and where the company is going, but also for me personally. And he said, well, yeah, I think you're right about this. And he's like, well, so what does that mean for you? And I said, well, look, you guys are looking at it, and our growth is stagnating a little bit. What I think it means is that before you do some additional expense adjustments, I think it means that I need to move on. And I've got a plan here for where I would put my organization. These people could go here, and this would. And he looked at me and he said, well, you can't really do that. And I said, well, you are going to be making adjustments, and I think I've just put a good logical plan in place ahead of you, so I think I can do this because that's the right thing for the organization and the right thing for me. And he said, well, you can't tell anyone about this then. And I said, fair enough. He said, let's get back together in 2 weeks and decide what's going on. And what I really experienced in this stage was there was a CEO who was kind of in his later years, and he was not prepared to make some of the decisions, the hard decisions to invest where they needed to going forward. But I didn't want to be part of an organization that was going to be stagnating. And so when I explained to my wife that I essentially put together a plan for how to lay myself off, she was a little shocked. She's a lot more risk averse than I am. But I said, look, I've got a few other things I'm working on. This is the right time. I need to go and move on. But I had recognized also that when you know and it's there, you have to trust your instinct. You have to trust your feelings, and you have to actually act on your feelings and do something about it. Not just think about it. It will continue to drive you crazy if you don't act on that. That's the worst thing that you can carry, is when you know something's wrong and you're not doing something to change it. Okay, so at that stage I moved on and had a few different opportunities, but I got to experience what it's like to really go hit the road and hit the street. And you realize that your relationships matter. how you treated people along the path, how you possibly impressed people along the way, but what your network really looks like. And I don't look at people in the network as a value, but it's something that's a real, tangible thing, where I have had experiences and been touched by people, but I've also watched people and helped out for people. Not because I want to build a network, but because I believe in people, and I believe that that's the right thing to do. And that is something that is key for you overall in life. Burning bridges is not a great path to happiness. It's not a great path to prosperity. It's not a great path to enjoying life in general. So, not saying you shouldn't stick up for yourself and make sure that you depart from possibly, toxic relationships. But you need to you choose wisely when you decide to fully burn a bridge. I think you can do it and move along maybe more diplomatically in some cases. So I was able to lean on a network and found a path into another organization that was growing and moving, and I was able to stay here in Utah. I enjoyed the outdoors lifestyle, and I worked there for quite a while. I got to work with a lot of startup companies. So this was an interesting part of me for the technology side anyway, is that I got to be on the early stages of new technology and advancement overall for networking and storage, for the movement of data overall. And that's kind of something that was key for me for the path where I am right now. We're a very small company, but we're working on some really interesting technology where we're combining memory and storage to access data much more quickly. This is used broadly in a lot of different vertical markets. Some are very interesting, some are just basic business transactions and improving business processes, but some are the types of markets that are looking at this, and with the large supercomputing show going on here, is just how people can access and analyze data much more quickly. You guys can imagine, and I'm sure you've seen many of the markets of what they can do with this, as far as human genomes and efforts to work on, excuse me, to work on how we understand our bodies better. Hopefully how we also understand our minds before we create too much artificial intelligence. But there are many really cool things that can be done with this. So it's fun to be a part of that. I get to work with cool companies and very bright people by doing what I'm doing. I guess to get to the stage of where I even was now, though, is I had an opportunity to work at a company that was starting to hit the same path that I had lived before. This was a great experience for me to realize, okay, wait a minute, I've seen the signs, I've seen this movie, what do I do? At the time, this company was starting to kind of hit its peak, and the market was starting to not grow so much. I was asked to consider opening up a European operation for the company, and take my family and move over. So I thought about it and thought, wow, that'd be great. I've really enjoyed my time in Europe. I wonder what my wife is going to say, which is fantastic. Back to choosing wisely. I called her and she said, that sounds amazing. Go for it. Go for it. So in the path of going for it, I had an opportunity where I was asked to be considered in this, right? Well, you want to throw your hat in the ring. Okay, great. But I learned later that while I was being asked to throw my hat in the ring, they'd really already kind of given the job to somebody else. So it was only through the path of actually truly going for it that I learned that I had to really win. It was not a level playing field here. And I had to kind of really win this outright. So I spent time and figured out how to get on the calendar of the COO, met with him, and presented a plan that I thought should be taken to the team overall as far as what should happen with Europe. And we connected well, and six weeks later, really, we were on a plane and moving to Dublin, Ireland. So my daughters were 6 and 9 at the time, and I think they will probably forever hold that over my head, but they will also forever thank me for the experience. We landed in Dublin in, I guess, end of August of 2008, just before Lehman Brothers crashed. So we were in a new country, and I was essentially not in Dublin except for on the weekends. I had a team in London, I had people in France and Germany, and I was traveling a lot. So travel is amazing and interesting, but there's also sacrifices that are associated with that. However, we lived our lives in a time, in that 3-year window that we were there, that I wish I could have that mindset on a regular basis. Is it was, we are here, we've got to see everything we can. We have a finite window. We must live and enjoy it, live it up. So we saw as much as we could. And they were young enough that we could yank them out of school, and it wasn't as challenging as it is now for missing AP classes and everything else. But we as a family, took turns deciding what the next destination was. And I was really, really impressed with my 9-year-old, where she got to choose first, and she built a whole PowerPoint presentation of where our first destination would be, with all the history associated with it. So, and why we need to see certain sites, and who are the main artists, and the excuse me, the history overall, the religious history. And they were exposed to the world in a different way, having spent time in Egypt and in Morocco and in much of Western Europe as we could see while we were there. But so this was a life experience. This may not have been the most amazing career move. In the end, I think it was also a good career move for me. But this was a life experience where my children, myself and my wife, also understand people in a much deeper way than you can from just traveling in a short period. We got to be associated with expats from all over, but I had employees from Holland and Germany, Sweden, France, Italy, and got to appreciate these people in a different way than you would, otherwise, and not living in that element. Excuse me. So overall, I wanted to, I guess, outline some of the lessons learned overall, and then I'll leave a few minutes that I can answer a couple of questions. I'd highlighted this in the very beginning, but I think the single most critical thing you can do at a young age is focus on introspection. Understand how to be self-aware and honest with yourself. Okay? Another one is understanding what your values really are. I think in a way I would almost identify this as know your own religion. Okay? I think understanding say religion meaning what overall what it is that guides you and gives you the right path. But also while you're doing that, understanding and appreciating other people's religion and what that might be and how that might be different than yours. Okay? Understanding what your skills really are. I'm not sure I truly understood where my skills lied until I started getting into practice and asking and being curious overall. When I say be curious, just in general, be curious. Be curious about people. Be curious about why. Ask why. Understanding as much as you can along the way. How do you get the curiosity? I think you only truly get it by forcing yourself to be curious and to think more and to ask more and learn more. I think the other thing overall is that you do need to choose a path. In the end, you have to at least choose some path. It might take you somewhere else, and hopefully it does. Hopefully it takes you many different ways, but you do need to choose a path and you need to move forward. And expect that might change. The beauty of social sciences in general for me is that it could take so many different paths, but you have a base and a core and an understanding. You've proven that you can work, you've proven you can study, you've proven you can follow through. Take a path, go work hard, and be open to where that might take you as you discover yourself and others discover you. And then the last thing overall is trust your instincts. When you know in your gut that you know a path, you know something is right, you know how you feel, you know how it is, trust it, but act on it also. Take the appropriate action and act. I think that's really the summary that I guess what I wanted to leave with you overall. I appreciate the path that I chose as political science is a great foundation for me. I'm proud to say that I have a degree in political science. I won't ever apologize for it. I'm proud to be a graduate of the University of Utah. And I'm proud to have been able to take a path that maybe wasn't exactly what I intended, but that people helped shape that path for me. And hopefully I can help shape paths for others along the way. Thank you.